There's a moment most casual WNBA fans completely missed. A regular season game, 2024, middle of the court, and Dana Evans and Caitlin Clark are standing inches apart. Not talking, not laughing. Players from both benches are already moving toward them. The referees are watching. The arena has gone quiet in that specific way arenas go quiet when something is about to happen that nobody can take back. It didn't escalate. But what that moment revealed about Dana Evans, her wiring, her competitive core, the part of her that simply does not register who she's standing across from, that's the part that has Indiana Fever executives paying very close attention right now. Because according to a new report from Sports Illustrated, the Fever may be moving to bring Evans to Indianapolis. And if you think this is just another depth signing, just another roster footnote buried in a slow free agency cycle, you haven't been watching closely enough. And before we go any further, if you were a Caitlin Clark fan, if you have been locked in on everything happening around the Fever this offseason, hit that like button right now and make sure you are subscribed with notifications on, because the moves being made in these next few weeks are going to define what the 2026 season looks like, and you do not want to be the last person to know when something breaks. The Indiana Fever are not building for next year, they are building for right now. And every single decision they make between today and opening night carries consequences that extend far beyond the basketball court. Before we get into Evans specifically, you have to understand the environment she would be walking into, because it's unlike anything else in professional basketball right now. This week, the Chicago Cubs posted a fan engagement tweet asking followers to submit their best chocolate chip cookie recipes tied to their Cubs fandom. Standard content, low stakes, the kind of social media post that gets 300 likes and disappears by noon. Except Caitlin Clark saw it, replied publicly, volunteered herself as the official taste tester, and then the entire internet lost its mind. That single tweet reply became a national story. Sports media picked it up, entertainment publications ran with it, lifestyle blogs were covering it by end of day. The Cubs got the biggest organic social media moment of their entire week from one reply, and Clark generated it on what was probably a random Tuesday morning, without a publicist, without a campaign, without any strategic intent whatsoever. That's not a social media story, that's a phenomenon story. Clark has crossed a threshold that almost no professional athlete ever reaches, the point where her presence in any conversation, no matter how unrelated to basketball, immediately becomes the most interesting part of that conversation. For the Indiana Fever front office, this is not a cute anecdote to share at a press conference. This is the mandate that shapes every roster decision they make. When your franchise player is operating at that level of cultural gravity, when she is extending the Fever brand from basketball arenas to baseball stadiums to mainstream pop culture without even trying, the pressure to protect that window and build around it with genuine urgency becomes absolute. You do not waste this. You cannot afford to waste this, which is exactly why the Dana Evans conversation matters as much as it does. The Sports Illustrated report from Grant Young lays out the current state of Indiana's roster construction with unusual clarity. The most urgent priority, retaining Kelsey Mitchell, appears to be handled. That matters more than casual observers might appreciate. Mitchell is not just a good player, she is the co-creator that makes Indiana's entire offensive system functional. You cannot run a Clark-centered offense with Clark as the sole ball handler and expect it to hold up across a 40-game regular season and a deep playoff run. Mitchell's ability to generate independently, to create her own shot, to pull defensive attention away from Clark when teams lock in on the primary option, that is the structural foundation the offense needs to breathe. The front office understood that, moved on it, and got it resolved. Good. But here's the part of the picture that's getting far less attention than it deserves. Indiana still needs a starting power forward, not a project, not a developmental piece, not a player who might be ready in 2 years. They need someone with physical durability, defensive capability, and the playoff experience to anchor that position on a team with genuine championship ambitions. Michaela Timpson showed real promise in her 2025 rookie season. The organization believes in her ceiling, and they should. But believing in a player's ceiling is not the same as throwing them into a starting role on a contender before they're ready. The Fever want a proven veteran beside her,
someone who has managed foul trouble in elimination games, someone who has rebounded against WNBA caliber post players in moments where the series is on the line. That search is active.
At the same time, the backup point guard question is sitting there unsolved, and it is significantly more important than its low profile would suggest. When Clark rests, and she has to rest, every starter in this league needs meaningful minutes off across a long season. Someone has to step onto that court and prevent the Indiana offense from going completely dark. 8 to 10 minutes at that position is not glamorous. It's not the kind of role that earns highlight packages or generates social media content. But it is absolutely, categorically where playoff runs are built or broken. The wrong player in that spot can erase 20 minutes of work in a single quarter. The right player can keep the margin intact long enough for Clark to come back and close. The name being surfaced as the answer to that problem is Dana Evans. Evans is 27 years old and entering the most productive stretch of her professional career. She came up through the WNBA system with the Chicago Sky, where she spent years building a reputation that doesn't translate neatly to a box score, but translates immediately to coaches. Relentlessly physical on defense, quick enough to stay in front of smaller guards in isolation, smart enough to read passing lanes before they fully develop, and aggressive enough to convert those reads into turnovers in half-court sets. She was never a star in Chicago. Nobody was confused about her role on the roster, but she was the kind of reliable, difficult depth piece that every coaching staff quietly relies on. The player who makes every game marginally harder for the opposition, who competes at a level that forces opponents to respect her even when they don't fear her. Coaches trust players like that in ways that don't always make the headlines, and that reputation was what set the foundation for what happened next. Before the 2025 season tipped off, Evans was traded to the Las Vegas Aces, and that move dropped her into one of the most demanding competitive environments in the recent history of the league. Playing alongside Aja Wilson, Jackie Young, and Chelsea Gray isn't just an upgrade in teammates, it's an entirely different standard of expectation. In a system that demanding, with players that elite around her, there is no hiding. Every possession matters, every defensive breakdown gets corrected, every loose play gets reviewed. You either rise to that environment or you get swallowed by it. Evans rose. Over the course of the 2025 season, she solidified her spot as a trusted weapon off the Aces bench. She wasn't asked to create, she was asked to defend, to compete, to protect possessions, and to execute within a system that was specifically designed to maximize Wilson and Young's production. She handled it. And then Game 1 of the WNBA Finals arrived. 21 points, 4 steals, 26 minutes off the bench in the opening game of the championship series. In a moment where the entire league is watching, where pressure is at its absolute maximum, where there is nowhere to hide and no margin for passivity, Evans didn't just contribute, she carried. She was the primary reason the Aces established control early in what should have been a tight, uncertain opener. That performance didn't just change how scouts saw her, it changed her market value overnight and placed her on the radar of every front office in the league looking for battle-tested backup production at a contract number that doesn't wreck their cap structure. Here's the thing about Dana Evans' season averages that every front office analyst already understands and that most public conversation around her completely ignores. 6.6 points per game is not the story. It is not even close to the story. Evans was operating inside an Aces offensive system that was architecturally designed to funnel primary possessions toward Wilson and Young. Her scoring volume was suppressed by structure, not by limitation. There is an enormous difference between those two things, and failing to understand that difference is how teams pass on players they should be signing. In Indianapolis, the role would be structurally identical to what she was doing in Las Vegas. Come off the bench, protect the lead, defend at the highest level you can sustain, keep the offense functional and forward-moving during Clark's rest minutes. Don't try to be the show, be the thing that protects the show from falling apart. That is a role Evans has already demonstrated she can handle under the maximum possible competitive pressure, in the finals against the best players in the world with everything on the line. The question hanging over this potential signing is not whether Evans can do the job. The question is whether Indiana moves fast enough to get it done before someone else does.
Because Evans is not a player who lingers. She had a career-defining performance on the biggest stage in the sport. She plays with a competitive fire that coaches immediately recognize. She's coming at a price point that fits within budget-conscious roster construction. That combination does not stay available on the open market indefinitely, and the teams that understand that are already doing their homework.
Now let's get to the part of the Dana Evans story that is simultaneously the most complicated and the most revealing. Evans was on the team that knocked Indiana out of the 2025 playoffs. She was part of the Aces machine that ended Indiana's season in the semifinals. For a fan base that has been watching this championship window with genuine emotional investment and building toward this moment across multiple seasons, that history carries real weight. There will be a segment of Indiana's community that has zero interest in watching a former playoff executioner collect a fever paycheck. That's a legitimate emotional response, and it deserves to be acknowledged directly. But here's what championship roster construction actually looks like. It looks nothing like fan comfort. The history of professional sports at every level is filled with former rivals, players who made life miserable for the opposition for years, who became absolutely essential pieces of title runs after crossing over. The question is never about what happened before. The question is always, specifically, precisely, what does this player bring to the challenge directly in front of you right now? And the answer for Evans goes deeper than playoff experience and statistical profile. She brings something genuinely rare at the backup guard position in this league, a proven, documented willingness to compete directly against Caitlin Clark without any deference whatsoever. June 16, 2024, regular season game. Evans still with the Chicago Sky. Clark drives. Evans wraps up the arm on the drive contact. They come face to face. Players from both benches move toward the situation. It does not escalate beyond that, but what it reveals is something that cannot be coached into a player and cannot be faked in a practice environment. Evans doesn't register reputation when she competes. She doesn't adjust her intensity level based on who is standing across from her. She competes at the same level regardless of the name on the jersey in front of her, regardless of the cultural moment that jersey represents, regardless of the arena noise and the camera attention and the weight of the situation. For Indiana's coaching staff, that quality is not a red flag. It is not a character concern. It is a selling point, and a significant one. Caitlin Clark is best served by a practice environment that genuinely challenges her every single day, not occasionally, not in big moments, every day. Teammates who bring real competitive intensity in the gym, who don't go soft in drills, who push back when Clark pushes, who refuse to be passive in competitive moments, that is what actually develops a generational player at the rate her talent demands. A backup guard who went directly at Clark in a regular season game and refused to blink, that is specifically the DNA championship coaching staffs seek out when they're building the practice environment around a player of Clark's caliber. Let's get to the dimension of this conversation that ultimately determines whether any of the rest of it is relevant. The Fever are operating with meaningful cap constraints heading into 2026. The Clark-Mitchell trio consumes the substantial majority of available payroll. That's not a problem. That's the correct allocation of resources when you have 3 players of that quality as your foundation. But it means every supporting cast decision has to be evaluated through a very specific lens. How much production can this player deliver per dollar spent, and does that production address a genuine identified need? Evans has never commanded max money. Her market this offseason is not expected to push into a range that strains Indiana's remaining budget, which makes her one of the most efficient potential acquisitions available at precisely the position where the Fever have their most pressing need. And that efficiency matters in a layered way, because Indiana's roster to-do list does not end with the backup guard question. The starting power forward search is still active and still critical. Additional frontcourt depth remains on the priority board. The front office cannot overspend at one position and create structural problems everywhere else. That is how well-intentioned rosters become fragile, imbalanced, and exposed the moment the playoffs shift gears and the margin for error disappears.
Evans at the right number solves the backup guard question cleanly, while preserving the flexibility needed to address the power forward situation and whatever other adjustments the front office identifies before the window closes. That is roster construction done correctly, surgical, targeted, and designed to maximize the core trio without compromising the depth that deep playoff basketball absolutely demands.
Here is the angle that sharpens this entire conversation to its finest point. This is not only a tactical acquisition. If Evans signs with Indiana, it becomes a story. And in the modern WNBA, a league that has never had more mainstream attention, more cultural visibility, more eyes on its storylines than it does right now, narrative matters in ways that directly affect the franchise's long-term trajectory. The player who helped eliminate the fever comes to Indianapolis and becomes the person protecting Caitlin Clark's minutes. The competitor who went face-to-face with Clark on the floor and refused to back down becomes the defender keeping Clark's offense alive when Clark sits. That storyline, former adversary, now fully committed ally, doesn't just play well with media. It reinforces the culture of toughness, competitive seriousness, and championship orientation that this franchise has been building deliberately since the day Clark arrived in Indiana. And then there's the locker room dimension that gets almost no attention in public analysis, but matters enormously to coaches who have actually been in championship environments. Evans brings finals experience that cannot be manufactured and cannot be purchased at any price. She has been in a WNBA Finals. She has performed under the maximum possible competitive pressure in the most watched game in the league's recent history, and she delivered when it counted most. For the younger players developing within the Indiana system, players who have never been in a playoff environment at that level, who have never felt what it actually feels like when elimination is one game away, sharing a locker room with someone who has lived that and come out the other side changes the culture of a practice environment in ways that never appear in any box score, but show up everywhere when the games actually matter. The Indiana Fever are not a finished product. The roster is not complete. Free agency is still open, and the front office is still working, making decisions quietly, without the noise of a trade deadline or the drama of a playoff series in the stretch of the offseason where championships are actually constructed or quietly squandered. Dana Evans may be one piece of that puzzle. The starting power forward solution is another. The broader depth questions around this roster represent additional layers that still need to be resolved before opening night. But here's what sits underneath all of it. The 2026 championship window for Indiana is as real as anything this franchise has ever seen. Clark, Mitchell, and Boston form a top three core that is genuinely elite in its construction. Clark is the offensive engine whose gravity reshapes defensive schemes before she even touches the ball, whose presence in transition creates advantages that ripple through every single possession. Mitchell is the secondary creator who generates independently when defenses overload Clark, who keeps the offense from becoming predictable and stoppable. Boston is the interior connective tissue, skilled, efficient, difficult to move in the post, and the player who makes the offense flow through angles that other front court options simply cannot replicate. What surrounds that core needs to complement it without duplicating it. You don't need another primary creator. You don't need another star. You need role specialists, players who execute within a defined system, who defend at a high level, and who can handle the physical and mental accumulation of a deep, grinding playoff run when every game feels harder than the one before it. Evans, if the reports are accurate and this deal gets done, checks every one of those boxes at the position where Indiana has its most urgent and most consequential need. The decisions being finalized right now, not at the trade deadline, not at the draft, but in these quiet weeks of late free agency when most of the public's attention has drifted, are the decisions that will determine what the 2026 season actually looks like from opening night through the final buzzer of the final game. Every move matters. Every gap either gets filled or stays open. And the franchises that understand that and act on it with precision and urgency are the franchises that are celebrating in June while everyone else is watching from home, wondering what went wrong and when the window closed without them noticing. Don't miss what happens next.